Good afternoon, everyone. Gareth Presch, founder of the World Health Innovation Summit. Delighted to welcome you to the Health Innovators Show. I'm your host. Delighted to be joined by Gordon Miller today, Ride for Freedom. Very excited to get into this conversation. Gordon, a quick introduction, please, and tell us all about Ride for Freedom.
Yeah, thank you. Very great to be here, Gareth. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, so my name's Gordon Miller, team leader and founder of Ride for Freedom. Our focus and our mission is to raise awareness to harness cycling, to raise awareness of modern day slavery and how people are affected by this heinous crime.
Amazing work, amazing work. I've been following your work for quite some time, not to mention all the cycling posts that you put up, which I'm very interested in. Let's go into the innovation yourself and the personal journey and inspiration. You know, what inspired you to pursue a career in innovation, you know, particularly in the health sector, because you're obviously merging exercise and health and well-being. And then could you kind of share with the audience like a defining moment in your journey that solidified your commitment to Ride for Freedom?
Sure, absolute pleasure. So it all began, my background's in journalism. So for 20 odd years, I was a journalist. I always had a passion for cycling, probably for about the last 15 years. And around till 2015, I became aware increasingly of the issue around human trafficking and modern day slavery. I was doing some comms work in the sector, particularly in the construction sector. And when I came across this issue, it was just mind blowing. I couldn't believe that there were at the time there were about 40 million people reportedly to be in some form of modern day slavery. Now that figure's gone up to 50 million. But at the time, even that 40 million obviously is horrific. So I kind of wanted to do some more advocacy work. I'd reached that period in my career where I've always had social justice at my heart. You know, as a journalist, you know, you're quite principled around these kind of things. And around 2015, 2016, I started to think, what could I do to do some more advocacy work? And that's when I came up with the idea of bringing together my passion for cycling and my comms skill set. And could that actually start to make a bit of a difference around modern day slavery to raise awareness of the issue? So a couple of years later, I sort of started off on a bike ride. Did a bike ride for a couple of other charities at the time, Hope for Justice and Unseen, which are two of the major charities in the human rights, modern trafficking, modern day slavery sector. And that was just like a little ride, and it went really well. I basically cycled from where I live in London to their head office is in Manchester and the other one's in Bristol. So I just cycled around, got the vibe, got a lot of positive feedback, and I decided to take it to another level. People saying to me, "What's the next challenge? How are you going to do? You know, how are you going to step this up?" So I decided to take on a Guinness World Record challenge, which was quite ambitious. But I thought, you know, obviously with my comms background, knowing that if you obviously get a lot of publicity, then it'll help the cause. And doing a Guinness World Record is about as good a publicity as you can get. So I basically decided to do a challenge where I GPS mapped the words "end modern slavery" and then I cycled them. And it was essentially across, the end was across from Manchester to Doncaster, the modern was across the Midlands, and slavery was across the south of England, finishing outside the House of Commons with the little tip of the Y at the bottom. So I did that, and it set a Guinness World Record, which has sadly since been taken, but I did another Guinness World Record, so I still hold one. So this was just all about raising awareness. It had a massive impact. You know, it had tens of thousands of social media posts. It was picked up on by something like 200 newspaper publications. So it raised a huge amount of awareness. And what it gave me was the impetus to believe that, you know, there was something behind Ride for Freedom, which could actually make this into an entity, which could do some good awareness raising. And after that, I spoke to somebody else and I said, okay, so what should I do for my next challenge? You know, every time you do a challenge, you've got to up your game, you know, otherwise people kind of like just say, oh, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's a nothing event. So I decided to cycle from Cadiz in southern Spain to London, which was 1,800 miles, 1,800 miles in 18 days, so 100 miles a day. I did this on an e-bike, a pedal assist, because that was the challenge that I could identify as a Guinness World Record challenge to raise awareness of the issue. I only had 3 weeks to do it, including a couple of days off on those 18 days, just to have a bit of a rest. And there was a Guinness World Record called the longest distance ever cycled on an e-bike over 1 week. So during the first half of that 18 days, I cycled the length of Spain from Cadiz to Malavia in the Basque Country in northern Spain. I did that in 7 days and I set a Guinness World Record, and that one still stands. But through this process, again, a lot of press and publicity. It was a human trafficking route, a documented human trafficking route that I cycled. People traffic from Africa, they are brought across on boats, and then they are trafficked, you know, along roads and so on, and into other parts of Europe. Again, all about raising awareness of the issue. And through that process of doing this ride and having, these extreme challenges, 240 kilometers a day, I think it was 1,706 kilometers that I cycled. So just over 1,000 miles in 7 days. Lots of time to think, lots of time to speculate about what to do. And the idea I came up with is, and this is kind of, the impetus, if you like, why Ride for Freedom became, if you like, from me just getting on my bike and raising awareness to actually becoming a program. I came up with the concept of our free wheel program, which is where we support survivors of modern day slavery by giving them free bicycles, free accessories, and training. And that was the kind of the catalyst to it moving from a little side hustle, me riding my bike, to becoming a community interest company, which it's established as now and has been since 2021. So that was the significant point that gave me the impetus.
It's absolutely amazing. What an incredible journey! Just tell us a little bit more, because this is very innovative. In my mind, this is really breaking barriers here. And so what? You mentioned 40 million when you started, and now you gave the numbers 50 million. What specific problem does your innovation aim to solve? How do you identify this need? And how does your innovation, improve the current approach? I guess, how are you making that change?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the key things is, I know I struggle at times with my mental health, and I know that one of the main benefits of me to alleviate those stresses and strains is by getting on my bike. I can literally spend 5 minutes on my bike, and all those anxieties or whatever that are mirroring around disappear. So I kind of knew that for myself, but I didn't want to just assume that would be the case for victims of modern day slavery. So when I came up with this concept, as I said, back in 2021, to actually to try the free will program, rather than just saying, okay, let's just implant it, we did a trial program with Unseen, the charity that I mentioned, where we wanted the hypothesis was that cycling would support mental health, physical health, mobility, and independence, all aspects of which would give confidence to individuals who are these victims of modern day slavery. And that was the impacts that we wanted to demonstrate, those four elements, and it did prove all of those things. We had 6 people come on the program. This was during COVID as well, so we wanted to get it across the road across the line in 6 months, but it took us over just about a year to be able to do the whole program. But consequently, we published an impact report, which was 66 pages. There is also an executive summary of 6 pages, which a lot of people will be delighted to know. But it's a really thorough, decent investigation that we did, and it did genuinely support those 4 pillars. That it does support people with modern day slavery, it supports them with their rehabilitation through their mental health, physical health, mental health in particular, but it also supported with their physical health, and it also supports their independence. Because a lot of people, when they're struggling with modern day slavery, they've got virtually no money, because a lot of them are in a system where they're not able to work when they're being rescued from the situation. So they've got no money. So to be able to move around and have the independence that on a bicycle gives them is absolutely fundamental. And it also supports mobility, because obviously, you can move farther and wider and get out into some pleasant parts of nature if you're on a bike more easily than you can if you're walking or whatever. So that was what sort of the inspiration from it. How did it help health and help that part of the rehabilitation back into society? Not the only thing, of course, but it's one element. Physical health, movement, those kind of things, which obviously help people enormously, everybody.
Yeah, and that brings me nicely. I mean, you're diving into the impact and the outcomes. So in terms of the wider community, what do you see your innovation having? What's the impact you see that having on global health, for example? And then how do you measure your success and failures? How do you measure the effectiveness of your programs?
Yeah, absolutely. The impact, the potential of the impact is absolutely colossal. Most people who cycle appreciate it. I mean, you look at countries like the Netherlands, Germany, which is often, in my mind, underestimated with the amount of people who cycle and the cycling infrastructure that they have there. I basically cycled all around Germany at one point. We do a particular advocacy campaign called "To Show a Red Card," which we show in football. I'm not sure if that's showing up, but we do this in football to raise awareness of the issue, because young people are trafficked from Africa in the name of football. And I'm a big football fan as well. I won't deny that. I'll confess to that. So I've cycled around all the Bundesliga clubs in Germany. I've cycled around all the Premier League clubs in the UK, and I show this red card. But also we have a little pilot program going in Nigeria as well, where we help where we educate children out there as to they can spot the signs and prevent themselves from being exploited. So that's the point about the infrastructure, the potential for cycling, the potential that gives for people's physical health. I mean, you know this better than I do, Gareth, because health is your specialism. But people, the more exercise they do, the less detrimentation there is to the health sector and things like that. So it's absolutely massive, the potential for that. So. But within our own sphere, if you like, within the human trafficking and modern slavery, so far we've had, over the last 2 years, we've had something like 90 people come through the program or register onto the program, and approximately half of them have finished bikeability training levels 1 and 2, which is bikeability training is what a lot of children get to do through cycling at schools when they learn to cycle. So they've all had had this training. A lot of the people who've come on the program are foreign nationals. I'd say probably 90% who've been trafficked into the UK. A lot of them for sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, you name it, all the different kinds of modern slavery, types of modern day slavery which people suffer from. So we've seen that, and we know that the upside that this gives them, because they report back to us. You say, how do we measure the impact? Before they come on the session, we ask them to fill in a questionnaire. Post the session, we ask them to fill in a questionnaire, and then we measure the impact it makes. How does it help their physical health, mental health, mobility and independence? Again, we always nail down on those 4 different key aspects, and pose them questions which obviously give an indication as to whether it's given them any upsides by attending the session. One of the things we're hoping to do is to do longer term studies, but it's been a little bit of a challenge because a lot of the people who are these victims, we have to protect their anonymity, or the charities that we work with have to protect their anonymity. So it's difficult for us to follow up with them post the immediate session in the long term, because a lot of them are only supported by the other charities that we work with for a couple of years, and then they move on into life, and their details are, not something that are publicly available, because they can be re-trafficked, in the wider picture. So we have to be careful and respectful of that. So it's been a bit of a challenge for us to get any long-term impact. But anecdotally, a couple of my colleagues bumped into somebody recently, 2 women at a session who'd been on our free will session 6 months ago. They bumped into them at an event, and they're both still cycling, and they're both saying how beneficial they found the program. So there's some good anecdotal evidence that it's long-term.
Yeah, and I think this is such an important point, because Sport England have just published a report around sport. Physical activity generates about 100 billion in social value. So exactly what you're talking about, the wider determinants of health, which is crucial, for the future of healthcare and for the NHS. I want to go into this. Is one of my favorite questions, actually. It's around the challenges, learning experiences that you've had as an entrepreneur, as a social entrepreneur. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced while developing, your ride for freedom? How did you overcome them? What are the lessons that you've learned on your journey? What can you share with some of the aspiring innovators that are out there?
Yeah, great question. It is challenging. I mean, it has been increasing. I mean, ironically, I find it ironically anyway, it's become more challenging over the last 18 months than it did for the first 18 months. Primarily financially, and that's the biggest challenge, because the economic climate that we're existing in has made it really difficult for us to achieve grants and funding, and found from foundations. A lot of organizations, I spoke to the National Lottery and people like that, and they're saying the number of applications that are successful now is like half or even a third of what they were previously to the previous couple of years. So that is one of the biggest challenges. A lot of corporates who previously had a discretionary spend which they would donate to charities, they have to be far more rigid about who they can donate to, because they don't have the amount of profitability that they previously had. So it's been a real struggle to keep our wheels turning, if you like. But one of the things I would say when it comes to how can you overcome this, I think it's about finding, as an entrepreneur, social entrepreneur, it's about finding ways to make things happen and to continue. If you have the passion and the purpose, I mean, that's kind of like fundamentally what it goes back to. I have a passion for this cause. I have a passion for cycling, so the bringing together the passion and the purpose to actually support people with, to support their mental health and their rehabilitation into society. The fundamentals around human rights. Everyone has human rights, and people, just because they're a victim of modern slavery doesn't mean that they should be abused or continually abused. So these things drive me forward, and they're things that make me proud to be running Right for Freedom, that we're actually supporting people. And it's rewarding because it speaks to my values. So these are things that I really focus in on when things get extremely tough. I'm just thinking, okay, go back to the basics. Okay, we have to reset. If we were trying to be expansive and develop free will in different parts of the country, well, we can't do that. We've just got to focus in on the areas where we're established, and reset, if you like, and then hopefully over time, because lots of people tell me this is a circular thing. I don't know the social sector before I'd done Right for Freedom. I was a journalist for 20 odd years, working in the commercial sector, and making a living that way. So it was new to me, and perhaps if there was anything that I was a little bit naive about, I didn't really imagine the third sector would be as difficult, as challenging as it actually is, in my experience. But people just tell me that's the circular world we're living in at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a difficult space to be in, and I think you've given great examples there for anyone who's thinking about jumping into the space to understand what resilience you need to build up in order to make it sustainable and continuous. It brings me on to our next question, sustainability and future plans for Right for Freedom. So, how does your innovation align, firstly, with the SDGs, such as good health and well-being? You've kind of given a bit of an insight into, and then what's your plans for the future? You mentioned you've got some innovation, some of the programs going in Nigeria, for example, and then how do you see things evolving over the next 5 years?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing, obviously, it speaks to good health and well-being, which is SDG 3, isn't it? So clearly, our model speaks to that. But the one that it most speaks to is 8.7. So SDG 8 is all around work and better work. And 8.7, and I'm reading this out as we speak right now, is to take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor and modern slavery and human trafficking, and secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor, including recruitment and use of child soldiers. So that is the UN's SDG 8.7. So that's really what Right for Freedom speaks to, primarily. But obviously, there's lots of pivotal points around health, well-being, social value, economic value, all kinds of aspects that into that bigger wheel of social value around human trafficking. So we speak to I've not actually done the exercise, and maybe I should, but I'm sure of those 17 SDGs, I'm sure we'd speak to a good dozen or more of them in the activities that we do. So that's and I think the SDGs are very important. I mean, sadly, this one that I just read out, that the ambition to eliminate the worst forms of child labor, it says by 2025 in this statement, this 8.7 statement. Sadly, the number of kids involved in human trafficking and modern day slavery has risen as it has for adults as well over the last 5 years. So the chances of that being eradicated by 2025 are nowhere near achievable. But that's not to say it's not an ambition that we should still be doing. Should still be forced and focused on. And what we do is about education. And when it comes to children, we go into schools. We did a pilot program last year in 2023, where we went into 6 schools in the East London, in the borough of Barking and Dagenham. And we talked to over 3,000 children about what modern day slavery is, how they can spot the signs. Going back to the red card, there's also on the other side, there's the yellow card, which is spot the signs of, and we share this with the children and educate them about how they can spot the signs to protect themselves, but also to advocate in their communities. Because, amazingly, a lot of the children, we've been into 1 or 2 of the schools on more than one occasion. And the children have actually gone home and are educating their parents about what modern day slavery is. Their parents have no idea, had never even heard of it. The children are then educating them, and it is a big umbrella. Modern day slavery is labor exploitation, sexual exploitation, debt bondage, all kinds of domestic servitude. All of these things and several others fit under the umbrella, and including county lines fits under the umbrella of modern day slavery. So that's an area of focus that we focus on with the children. To educate them as to how they can be, abused and exploited by others. And it has happened a lot in Barking and Dagenham. There's documented reports of this. So it's really important that we educate the children. And we go into mostly primary schools, and there are children of age 10 and 11, obviously the elder end of the primary schools, who have been exploited. So it's really, really important. And ultimately our ambition is to take our schools program and our free will program into the wider world, to get that initially to set it up in the UK. We do have a footprint in the USA. We've got our 501c3 charitable status set up in the USA. So we have an ambition. America has more, because of the huge number of citizens. The percentage of victims of human trafficking is massive in America. And it's a real big issue out there. So we have an established, we don't have an established program, but we are established as a charity out there, and our ambition is to take the program there, take it everywhere. There's the potential for it, and I think there is there's sadly the need for it, and there's also the demand. There is a demand for, based on what we know it can do and achieve in the UK, there is the demand to do that overseas. But whether we have the time and over the next 5 years, let's see how the world turns and see if we can step this game up and so on.
Yeah, it's such vital work. I mean, even the awareness raising. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this kind of saying, wow, this is incredible what you're doing. You're using, physical activity, cycling to kind of put the spotlight on something that isn't really highlighted. It's not something that's on our daily, radar, but it's crucial. I mean, you mentioned the numbers going from 40 million to 50 million. I mean, that's a huge number of people. There's so much work that has to be done here. We talk about collaboration and partnerships, in terms of like being able to move the dial. How important, have partnerships been in the development of Ride for Freedom? Are there any key collaborators you'd like to mention? What role do you think cross-sector collaboration plays in driving, meaningful innovation? And that's what we want to see here, is like actual meaningful innovation. I think one of the points you made about your scaling up is, you're able to create jobs. That's a brilliant idea in terms of being able to deliver a program that's meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, two things to that. Again, great question. The work collaborating with other charities in our sector has been fundamental. This wouldn't happen without it. So, I mean, we for example, we work with Hestia in London, one of the charities who directly supports the survivors on a daily basis. And we are, one of their several partners who they work with. They work with other people who might support the survivors by teaching them how to cook, or teach them how to, support them with writing a CV and things like that. So we're one program that can, that they've identified. When we approached them, that they thought, yes, this would have an upside for the survivors. They asked them, would many of you like to join the program? And yes, they did. And therefore it's mushroomed from there, because people have word of mouth shared it with other people and so on. So Hestia are a fundamental charity that really supported that. Unseen are a charity that supported us with it, say with the initial pilot program. Others like Migrants Help, others Medi Trust, Hope for Justice have been helpful in supporting us around advice and guidance in various factors. So there are more than 30 charities in the UK that I'm aware of within our modern slavery and human trafficking sector, and each and every one of those is supportive of each other, to raise awareness of the bigger issue. And as you say, I mean, it's not in everybody's radar every day, but I almost can't, obviously, because I'm in this world, it's in my radar every single day. But there's so many crossovers, because this is about social justice, this is about human rights, this is about everyone having the ability and the agency to decide and make their own choices in life, because if you're not able to make your own choices, and through labor choices and things like that, that can be a form of labor exploitation, as well as it can be financial. If you're not getting paid the right amount of money, if you're getting forced to work longer hours, these are all forms of labor exploitation, which sits under that bigger umbrella of modern day slavery. So it's been absolutely fundamental working with all those charities to educate myself, because this isn't my specialist sector. I was a journalist for 20 odd years, but not in this sector. But the crossover with that, when you asked about different sectors, where it's really fundamental is because there are lots of sectors, particularly in the UK, globally, but in the UK, the sectors which are particularly prone to modern day slavery are sectors like construction, agriculture, the care sector. invariably you can sort of like look at the pattern between those. Is those sectors where the lower paid workers, there are many lower paid workers. So people working on construction sites doing the basic jobs there, they're often unskilled, underskilled, less skilled individuals. The same in the agricultural sector. People who come in for seasonal work, they get exploited by gangs, by gangmasters and by criminal gangs who exploit them for money. It's all about money at the end of the day with these people. So raising awareness and collaborating, we have a particular strength and deep relationship with a lot of companies in the construction sector. It also helps that my background as a journalist was in the construction and real estate sector. So that's kind of, there is a crossover there. So I understand how that sector works. I've got, contacts, going back 20 odd years in some regards. So, that's the real area where there's a focus on it. But the fact that it's a huge impact area for them, and part of the Modern Slavery Act of the United Kingdom 2015, when it was introduced, which was when this first came into my mind, was, the responsibility that companies have to mitigate modern slavery in their own supply chains and in their own direct operations. So they want to be seen to be supporting. They need to be seen. It's a compliance. It's a legal aspect. They need to be doing actions that are supporting, that are aware, raising awareness amongst their own colleagues and their own supply chains, but also the more mature organisations understand that to get behind programs that offer remedy, the remediation program, which our free will program is the next level. Because if you're starting to support survivors to help them get either back into work or reset their lives, there is a moral responsibility, but there is also a legal responsibility as well. And that's where these cross-sector innovations really come into play and are really, really helpful.
No, it's brilliant to see that sort of cross-sector collaboration and how you're bringing like the construction industry, agriculture. At the same time, I'm sure that you're giving advice around how those industries can, embed sort of like cycle to work schemes, so these all have influence around on the wider social determinants of health, which is just brilliant. I want to finish off with like some, advice that you would have for, aspiring innovators, someone who wants to get into health innovation or into the SDGs, for example, and most importantly, because you did give a bit of an insight into it, you were talking about your mental health and how do they stay resilient and motivated during the ups and downs,
Yeah, I think, a couple of things. I think firstly, it's about collaboration. It is, I think one of the main challenges, certainly a bit of reading I've done and a bit of support I've had over the last 18 months or so when things have been especially challenging, is how entrepreneurs are often have quite a siloed mindset. And they also think of themselves, they think everything, all the responsibility and all the accountability is on them. But I've found certainly what supported me over the last year when I've been having some coaching and things is it's not all on you. Share it with people, share your story, share your challenges, share your anxiety, share your everything, and people will respond to you. People will be supportive, and if you don't ask them, they don't know. How could they possibly know? So I think that's been a fundamental learning to me, is even though, as an entrepreneur, you need to sort of take the lead, if you like. You need to be sort of, the guy who's got the innovation, who's out there trying to move things along. But it's not all to you. Share things, listen, try and learn. I'm getting old in my years now, so it's not always easy to learn new things or to accept, taking new things on board. But especially when you're working in a third sector, which, if you're moving from a sector where you've previously been in the commercial sector and now you're working in a different sector, you've got to learn. You've got to learn new things, read books, listen to podcasts, watch this series. All those kind of things will help enormously, because it's the fundamental. Don't ever give up on your learning, even if you hit your early retirement years. There's still time to learn. There's still embrace new things. Don't think you've got all the answers yourself. I think that's one of my biggest learnings over the last couple of years, is because went down the trajectory of it going brilliantly, flying, and then suddenly it was like a sort of a stopping point, hits a ceiling. Again, nothing on us, but we tend to always, as human beings, certainly in my experience, we tend to think things are our fault. So it's always a challenge to overcome that and accept that the world is a little bit different post COVID. So post the last 2 years. So
absolutely. And I think also there's lessons, where sometimes you have to take a step back to go forward.
Yeah.
And a lot of people see that as like negative or as a failure, but it's not. It's just you take a pause and you realize you've achieved quite a lot and you need to just reset, and that's okay. It's okay to do that.
Yeah.
So I think these are such wise words, Gordon. Just finally from me, like I just wanted to ask and share with the audience, where can people reach out to yourself and Right for Freedom?
Yeah, so we're on the website, rightforfreedom.org. So we're there. We're on social media. So we're on LinkedIn in particular and Instagram. So those are the main platforms that we're using. People will see me on Strava. If anybody's any cyclists or runners or whatever doing any physical activity, you'll find me on Strava as well. I mean, I'm still passionate about leading this on the bike. This is our USP, if you like. Doing it through cycling. So I'm continuing to do. I've got ambitious rides planned for next year and so on to continue to ride it. But providing workshops, providing educational programs, providing the free will programs is what our broader team does as well as me. So that's what it's all about. Just keeping the wheels turning.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm very excited for the future. I really enjoy working together. It's one of the, I really, really do enjoy catching up with yourself. It's been such an insightful interview. Thanks a million for joining us. I wish you every success. For those who want to tune in to our next episode, it'll be on December 6th. We'll be talking to John Murphy from BioStream. But from myself and Gordon and the Health Innovators Show, we'll just say thank you very much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode. So thanks, Gordon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.